Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. It is a pleasure to have Governor Cuomo with us today. Governor Cuomo, welcome. I would also like to welcome some of the special guests here. Roswell Park President and CEO, Skip Trump. And we are at Roswell Park, actually, so welcome to Congressman Brian Higgins. Welcome, Congressman. City of Buffalo Mayor Byron Brown. Erie County Executive Mark Poloncarz. Mark. Senator Tim Kennedy. Welcome, Senator. Assembly Member Crystal People-Stokes. Assembly Member Sean Ryan. Assembly Member John Carretto. And my friend and co-chair of REDC, Dr. Howard Zemsky. Over the last 2 years, Governor Cuomo has taken bold steps to revitalize our upstate economy. And I would say that even if I had not been the co-chair of the Western New York Economic Development Council. He knows that our university system is one of the jewels of the state, and that by working with the New York businesses, we can help educate our young people for the jobs of tomorrow. 1 year ago, he launched the Startup New York, which has truly been a game changer for the upstate New York. At first, I thought I had misheard him when he told me about the program. But it is real. Zero taxes for 10 years for companies that locate to expand the startup zones and the partners with local universities. That is an incredible opportunity. And just 1 year later, we are already seeing the return on that investment. Companies from across the country and around the world applied through a competitive process to become startup companies. And we couldn't be more proud to have some of the first official startup companies locate here in Buffalo and partner with UB. It is now my pleasure to introduce a representative of one of those companies, Dr. Vijay Kumar of Askew Diagnostics in Germany. Dr. Kumar is a UB grad. He came here 40 years ago, got his PhD at UB, and this is his second startup company in Buffalo, and he has been a successful entrepreneur here. Startup gave Askew the opportunity to expand to New York and partner with UB Genome Project. And we wouldn't be more excited to welcome Dr. Kumar back to UB and welcome Askew to New York State. Dr. Kumar.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's always a pleasure to interact with the university, and with this opportunity, I'm very delighted to take an active part again. I spent, as some of you may know, many years as a faculty member, and now it is an honor to be representing a company based in Germany called Askew Diagnostics. And you may be wondering why a German company is doing in Western New York. And the answer is what Mr. President said a few minutes ago, Startup New York. Without Startup New York, we might not have been here. And it's the vision of the governor that made it happen. When we heard about this startup opportunity to grow our business tax-free for 10 years, I invited my partner, the principal of the company, believe it, in the month of February, so that he can experience the winter. So to my surprise, he enjoyed it. So that also made it happen. We, as Q Diagnostics, are thrilled to invest several $1 million during the next couple of years. And in doing so, we will create upward of 50 good-paying jobs in Western New York. And again, as I mentioned to you, it would not have been possible. And actually, you may call it the Startup New York sealed the deal for all of us. And I'd like to introduce the person who had the vision and for us was a blessing, Mr. Governor Cuomo, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. To Mr. Kumar, welcome. Now, by now, I'm wondering if you didn't have them come in February, you brought them in the summer, maybe we would have gotten more jobs. What do you think? Mr. Kumar said that startups sealed the deal to bring the companies here. I was just in Rochester with a company that's coming because of startup, and he said it's because the governor made us an offer that we can't refuse. Everything comes back to the Godfather movie, even economic policy. Let's give Mr. Kumar a big welcome and thank him for his good work. It is my pleasure to be back in Buffalo. There's such a positive energy. There's so much going on. I just love coming to see it and be part of it. And a lot is going right in Buffalo. A lot went very wrong for a very long time, but right now a lot is going right. And there are a couple of reasons why that I want to discuss with you today. But a couple of reasons we have in the embodiment of the leadership of Buffalo. And you have a political leadership team that is here right now that is working and is working for the people of Buffalo. And has put their own politics aside and is really coming together and is really producing. And they've been acknowledged, but they're doing such a great job. I'd like to do it again and ask them to stand, and then we'll give them a round of applause. Let's start with Congressman Brian Higgins. Please stand up, Brian. Mayor Byron Brown, County Executive Mark Poloncarz, Senator Tim Kennedy, Assemblywoman Crystal Peoples-Stokes, Assemblyman Sean Ryan, John Soretto. Stand up. Let's give them a round of applause because they are doing a great piece of work. We also have partnered the political leadership with the corporate leadership. And Dr. Satish Tripathi and Howard Zemsky have been running the Regional Economic Development Corporation, and they are doing really fantastic work. Let's give them a round. Doctor, thank you so much. And we have with us today Leslie Watley, who came over from the private sector to start the startup program. She had never been in government before, and she was a little skeptical about coming to government. She was at financial institutions. She was at J.P. Morgan. And I said, no, come work in government. It's almost like the private sector. Sometimes a little slower, but not really, not really. And you'll love it. It'll all be positive. Right, Leslie? Has it all been positive? It's been fantastic. Leslie Watley, let's give her a round of applause. I am in the process of writing a book. Mandatory politician writes a book. And I have been putting it off, and I started like 2 years ago, and I'm coming up close to the finish date now, and I'm way behind, so I've been spending a lot of time. And for those of you who think maybe I should sit down and write a book, don't do it, is my main advice. It is much harder than you think. But it's actually been productive in some ways for me because so much of what I do is day to day, and there's a crisis of a day, du jour, and you're going from day to day. The book requires you to take a step back and put a frame and a perspective to things. And I've been writing a lot about Buffalo in the book. And 4 years ago, Buffalo is the most depressed area in the state of New York. period. When I say Buffalo, Western New York, most depressed region in the state of New York, both in terms of reality of economic output and in terms of perception. When you ask people what they call right track, wrong track, do you think your region is on the right track economically or wrong track? It was the most depressed region. And when you look at the reality of the numbers, you understood why people felt that way. When people ask, well, why did you make such an effort in Buffalo right away? You spent a lot of time in Buffalo. Because that's where we were needed most. That's where state government needed to apply itself. Well, why was that the situation? 3 reasons. 1, economy had shifted, and it had been shifting since the 60s, and the shift in the economy affected Buffalo, like it affected a lot of other manufacturing cities. Just the economy shifted. Second, the state government in Albany was constructively abandoned Western New York. I don't believe the state government in Albany showed the right care or attention that they needed to for Western New York. It's hard to say. It's not pleasant to say. But I believe that's the truth. Third, you had the highest tax state in the nation. And businesses were becoming more mobile, and people were becoming more mobile, and they could shop, and you had a choice. You could live in the highest tax state in the nation, or save more of your income and move to another state. And more people were moving. You put those 3 factors together, that was Buffalo. And you put those 3 factors together, the power goes out. That's what happens. But we don't really need the power at this point. TV cameras, you're on your own. You put those 3 factors together, and that was the story of Buffalo. The combination of those 3 factors. 4 years ago, we say we have to start to unravel them. Shift in the economy. Shift in the economy is the shift in the economy. That's life. We had to find out what we do to reinvent ourselves, right? Private corporations go through that every day. New competition. How do you reinvent yourself? There's a corporation of Western New York. And we were in the steel business, and we were in the manufacturing business, and that business is now gone. Okay, we have to reinvent ourselves and come up with a new economy. That was aggravated by the second factor, which was you needed help, and you needed the state government to help, and the state government wasn't there. Why not? First, because the state government wasn't all that competent in and of itself. And the state government wasn't really performing. And second, because of politics. What happened was upstate New York started to shrink. People started to leave. And more power was... Power of language, that's what that's called. More power was developing in downstate New York. And this is true. And we have to remember this to make sure it never happens again. And as the political power was moving to downstate New York, it was coming at the expense of upstate New York. And the state government in Albany began focusing more on downstate New York and less on upstate New York. Just at a time when upstate New York needed help making that economic transition. On top of that, highest taxes in the nation. And we literally have been addressing one at a time. The economic shift, we're working through that. That's what today is all about. We're finding new business lines everywhere. We're turning that corner. State government focus like a laser for 4 years. You have never seen as much focus by upstate New York, on upstate New York by the state government as you have by this administration in modern political history, period. My Lieutenant Governor Robert Duffy, former mayor of Rochester, has been magnificent, taking job one, focusing on the upstate economy. By the way, my new Lieutenant Governor is going to be just as good, focusing on the upstate economy in Western New York. But it became a focus. And we had upstate New York divided into different regions. Why? Because there is no one New York State economy. There's a Long Island, there's a North Country, there's a Finger Lakes, there's a Western New York. We came up with a business plan for each region. Western New York region, Dr. Tripathi, Howard Zemsky, head of the Regional Economic Development Council. The state then said, because Buffalo has problems that are worse than anywhere else, we're going to put our money where our mouth is, and that's the Buffalo $1 billion announcement. So we had the Regional Economic Development Council plus $1 billion. At least you think Dr. Tripathi and Howard Zemsky, yes, they're geniuses, but they were aided by $1 billion of state money. And it's easy to be a genius when you have $1 billion in your pocket. They're geniuses anyway. But that was the commitment and the partnership with the state. And then we tackled the problem of state taxes. And what did we do? We reduced state spending to under 2%, to the lowest level of increase in state spending ever. Literally, Budget Department cannot find a 4-year period where the state rate of spending went up less than it went up here. When you spend less, you can then tax less. And we lowered the taxes, income taxes, for every New Yorker at every income tax rate. Every New Yorker at every income tax rate pays a lower tax rate today than 4 years ago. And the middle class, up to $300,000, so it's a broad middle class, right? That's how they define it, up to $300,000, lowest income tax rate since 1953, believe it or not. That's what the current income tax rate is. We then reduced the corporate tax rate to the lowest level since 1968, lowest manufacturing tax rate to the lowest level since 1917, all right? So we brought our taxes down to make the state overall more competitive. And then to supercharge the effort, we came up with Startup New York. What is Startup New York? Startup New York takes the negative and flips it to a positive. If we were not competitive because of our high taxes, and people were shopping economic circumstances and leaving us because of high taxes, we'll then flip it and we'll become the low tax place to locate. Well, how do you do that? We'll form zones, geographic zones, and in those zones, we will have the lowest taxes in the nation. And to make it simple, we'll make them zero tax zones, okay? Zero taxes. Well, some states have no income tax, so that's zero also, yes. But these zones are actually cheaper to locate a business than states with no income tax, because when a state has no income tax, they have a different type of tax. No income tax, but they'll have a property tax that's very high, they'll have a value-added tax, because they need some revenue. These are 100% no tax zones. No income tax, no property tax for 10 years. So if people were leaving us because we were expensive, well, now people have to be coming to us because we are the most economic place to locate. 64 zones. How many of the zones are in upstate New York of the 64 zones? 59 of the 64. Why? Because this was an upstate New York initiative. This was Albany's way, my way of saying, I know we haven't been there for you, and we're going to establish these tax-free zones in upstate New York to get a boost for upstate New York. By the way, 59 out of 64. My proposal to the legislature was all of them in upstate New York. But there are politicians in downstate New York also, and the legislative process, but 59 out of 64, and by the way, I'll take that agreement any day of the week. And that's what the startup zones are all about. And they go right to the weak point of the state. Because listen to this. The new jobs are coming from where? The new jobs are coming from young minds with creative ideas coming out of great schools. What made Silicon Valley Silicon Valley? What made the Boston Miracle the Boston Miracle? Great schools producing great minds with great ideas. New York has the great schools. We have schools that are as good or better than any state in the nation. What was happening to us is we had the great minds creating the great ideas. 75% of them left within the first year. 75% left within the first year. Why? They were new businesses. There were 2, 3, 4, 5 people. Private equity investor would come in and say, I'm going to invest in your business, but I want to move you. And I want to move you to a place that has a different tax environment than New York because it's too expensive. And we were losing 75% of our businesses. I was just in Rochester with a company. Person was from RIT, educated at RIT, came up with the idea in RIT, went to Connecticut, now they're coming back. So this goes right to our weak point. This is where we were losing companies. And with startup, it says, no, this zone, working with this school, 10 years, no taxes. We literally legislated it last year. We then have been establishing it. And today, Dr. Kumar, we announced it with a company in Rochester. We have 12 companies that are moving to the state of New York in startup zones. In Buffalo, the Askew New York Incorporated, Clearview Social, Coach Me Plus, Decision Place, Heads Up Display, Lineagen, Newport Technologies, Synapis Pharma, Rochester, the Datto Company, Cornell Incodema, SUNY Downstate AmeriCorps Registry, Modern Meadow, 12 companies, 8 in Buffalo, 400 jobs. That's Startup New York. And I know it was a long time coming. And I know there are a lot of bad years in Buffalo. I know there are a lot of bad decades in Buffalo. And I know it got depressing and it got gray and it was hard to believe again. And I know there were a lot of plans along the way and a lot of politicians with a lot of promises and a lot of ideas, and I know very few things changed. Today is a different day. Today is a different day. You see it in the numbers. You feel it in the street. You can see it on people's faces. Today is a different day, and this is a different Buffalo. And the best is yet to be. These 12 companies, this is just a matter of months. Just a matter of months. We're seeing it all across the board. This state created 440,000 new jobs. This state created more jobs than any state except one since the recession. Last year was the largest drop in unemployment in upstate New York in recorded history. New York and I believe with the energy and the momentum that we have going, this is not going to be, are we going to make Buffalo what it was? We're going to make Buffalo better than it has ever been before. That's what this is all about, and this is the step we're taking today. Thank you, and God bless you.
I want to thank you all for coming. This is an interesting day, and it's a great day for Buffalo. Thank you.